the cloud. Hey, Nick, we were just talking a little bit ago about how the campaign's going. Can you tell me how the campaign? First of all, it's the 10th district, right?
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Okay, and that's Loudoun County, Leesburg, some part of Winchester.
Not city of Winchester, but Winchester zip code. Same thing with I have Leesburg, town of Leesburg, and then I also have Leesburg zip codes, which aren't in the town. So same type of situation out in the western part of the district.
Okay, that squares me away a little bit. So you were talking about knocking on doors. You're talking about competitive edge and where this district seat has been in the past.
I think I have something, if you don't mind, to show it to you. So these are boots, pretty thick, and from knocking doors so much, I wore holes in them, and they're thick leather boots. And one of the things that I've growing up, I had dyslexia, and I don't know how to read till I was 12. So everything has always been about perseverance, which is why I love VMI so much, because everyone I've known who has gone there and has finished really preaches the same thing that my life has always been about, and is working hard and persevering. And so when I jumped into this race, everybody had written it off. And my whole life, I was told I wasn't going to go to college, told I couldn't get a master's degree. The list went on and on and on. And I always overcame. So I like challenges. And so I dedicated myself through, these shoes, I wore holes into them like 3 months ago. So now I'm on a whole nother pair of boots, and I realized now they're starting to have holes. So through knocking 11,000 doors and walking 1,700 miles in the district since December, the grassroots portion of the campaign has really driven up my support, especially among what we've identified as swing voters, and not your traditional swing voters, people who were Republican, and then for one reason or another, they didn't like the president and they started voting Democrat. And so hard work and going and putting my face in front of those people has really won a lot of them over. So not only my door numbers has taken a district that was 58% in for Biden and made it a toss-up, but my ability to fundraise, thanks to my association, thanks to partners such as your all's lovely PAC, and just hard work and burning down the phone. And my fundraiser always says to me, there's a lot of candidates I work with, and when somebody says no, they just hang up. But I always persevere and try to forge a relationship, even with people who might be, for one reason or another, done with politics. And so much like all my friends who have gone to VMI, if you want to accomplish anything in life, if you give up the moment you hit a hardship, you're not going to go very far. And we kind of control our own destiny. So hard work, and perseverance is how we've taken a seat that was written off by everyone and made it the most competitive in the state of Virginia.
That's fantastic to hear. Your friend and my friend, Tom Greenspan, just checked in.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Nick. Good to see you.
You too.
So this is good. This is the first. We have a third party on the interview, but I think it's great. So you sent me something just a few minutes ago. By the way, we're recording right now. And I haven't even done an intro yet, but we'll do an intro here after we get warmed up. You sent me something which I'm going to share on the screen, and you can talk to as far as the numbers go in the category of how this thing is going. By the way, today's September 17th. It's the starting of the first day of early voting season, as we like to. There's grouse season, there's wild turkey season, there's
football season.
There's football season, there's pig hunting season, and there's deer season, and now there's voting season, voting half year. It'll eventually turn into. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this screen. This is a technology first for me, Nick and Tom. I've never done this on a call. I did rehearse it a few times before the call. So if I flub this up,
see it.
Yeah, man. And then Nick, I'll have control of it and you tell me to scroll up, scroll down,
Okay.
or whatever. Okay, I'll make sure I don't have any compromising material up here. Okay, so here it is. This is it right here, I believe. Share, and here we go. This is
All right.
what you sent me, right, Nick?
Yes, yes. And I am, generally I pay a good staff of people to go over this, and it's all positive. So I'm going to try to do my best to be my campaign manager all at once. So this it shows right here on the left column in the first bar graph. It's at the top. So if the election were held today, who would you vote for? So we polled back in May 20th, and that was our first poll, kind of gave us our guidepost. And one of the things that we were shocked by in our own poll, and every poll since, and their strategy has kind of confirmed this, is even though I was relatively unknown, people they liked my message, talked about overcoming dyslexia early on and wanting to inspire kids to chase and make a difference in the world, because all kids, regardless of their learning abilities, were struggling. And so at first it was 41-39 her, with a margin of error, I think about 6. And so then a lot of people were undecided. And so then we did another poll just a couple weeks ago, and it showed us in a dead heat, 43-43. And more people were starting to pay attention. So that's at 14%. There's a lot of polling that goes out there. Our poll, what we really wanted to focus on is you can poll all registered voters. You can poll voters who have just a high propensity of voting in these off-year elections. So we were more interested in likely voters than just voters. And so same thing in early May, did it again in August, and it had us at 43-43. Of that 14%, most of them were breaking the Republican way. And so that was kind of positive. And that's why we say the election, I mean, it starts today, but if it ended this week, it would be a squeaker, but we are very confident that we would certainly win it. This is where it gets interesting. And so we've just started to, I hate negative campaigning, but when somebody takes a stance as an elected leader on policy, that's policy campaigning. And so we have not done anything personal or attacking her as a individual, but we've highlighted what she has voted for, which has been not necessarily great for the district. So when we polled her favorabilities in May, she had 32% of the people thought of her as, in a positive way. 18% saw her as unfavorable, and her name ID of no opinion, adds into the name ID. So that was 73% of the people knew her, 27% had never heard of her. But what we saw, and this was kind of also interesting, is because she began to, right around the time this poll was commissioned, she began attacking me. And so whether or not it was 2 mailers at this point that we did highlighting her policy positions, or the fact that she attacked me and misrepresented the facts, which that's a whole nother story. But I had worked for doing some consulting work for a coal company. I worked on one issue, the miners' health care and pension, and it was bipartisan. And so she attacked me, called me a coal lobbyist. I was trying to take away health care. In most districts, I think that would play, but since there was a high concentration of people who work in DC and pay attention to national policy and know how to track down bills, I don't know if that drove up her unfavorables, because we just did 2 mailers attacking her for the gas tax and utility rate increases. But that 13% jump on her personally, not the Democratic ticket at large, was shocking, and it was a good sign for us. So of course her name ID overall went up. people are starting to pay more attention. She's doing a lot of mailings. And so she came in at about 83% name ID, but her favorability rating is only +3. What was really positive and what we liked is my name ID in May was, it was 47%, which for a first-time candidate was fairly good. A lot of that was driven by the door knocking, and we started our mail early. And so then, but my favorabilities, we hadn't defined me yet, and we're still working on that. But favorability for me went up from 16 to 25, so that was +9. That was a good movement. My unfavorables went up 8. That says 9. I think that was a typo by a pollster. And my no opinion, which was kind of interesting, it stayed at the same. So there's a large portion that we still have to define me to, so they see us positively. And the never heard of, went down 17%. So that was some good movement that we were happy about. But my plus or minus favorability was +9, which was 3 times as large as hers. So we were very happy about that. Now down below, this is, and this is kind of getting, a little out of my forte, but this is what we call the generic. Oh no, that was up. Oh, actually, is there generic? Can you scroll up a little bit? Oh, okay, this one doesn't have the generic. I apologize. So down here, this was the question we asked, like, regardless of political party, would you vote for someone if you like them? And so we saw 82% in this poll said yes. And that gets back to my earlier point that being able to define who I am as an individual and who I'll be as a leader is very important. But what we also found that was very interesting is 40, hold on. There's a 19-point swing of people who would prefer someone who is young and brought a fresh approach to politics. We're really pushing bipartisanship over a career politician. And so that's a very large margin above. And then that's kind of highlighted here. So some people move towards, career politician, but +4, and political outsider, although I don't personally like that term, is +5 in our direction. And so people are starting to make up their minds. And then this conclusion, what it really sums up is that we're in a good position. And it's just what I was talking on a little bit earlier is she's very likely to outspend us. And it's going to come down to if we have enough to implement our plan. And regardless of how much she spends, as long as we meet our goals, we will win this election. We're in a really good place. A year ago, or I guess 9 months ago when I got in, nobody thought we could be here. But to my earlier point about perseverance and hard work, that's what got us here, and perseverance and hard work is what's going to get us over the finish line.
Well, certainly likability. You're a very likable guy to talk with, and we had a short conversation before we started this thing. I'm going to do this a little different, and then I had preset questions, but I may just go into conversation, and we'll talk about VMI stuff later at the end of this. But before I do that, I got to first intro this. So we're 10 minutes, 12 minutes into this, and I haven't even introed. My name is Matt Daniel. I am the chairman of the Spirit of VMI Political Action Committee. Today, we have Nick Clemente with us, the House of Delegates district from the 10th. And you've already explained where that is. That's Northern Virginia. It's where you're seeing all the education information, news that's happening, which I'm going to ask you about, or I'm going to ask you to talk about a little bit, your impression of that stuff. Running against a candidate who's been here since 2016, I think.
2017. She got elected.
2017, Wendy Goditis. up there in Northern Virginia that has traditionally, or at least in the last several years, has been the bluest of blue of districts. And it looks like maybe that is taking a different turn as per the discussion that you just gave us with that. That was a great breakdown of the incoming polling data that you have. We've done a bunch of these interviews already. We've done ones up in Northern Virginia with Tara Durant, Gina Ciarcia, JD Maddox out of the 45th in Alexandria, western part of Virginia with Jason Ballard in the Blacksburg area. That's the 12th. Around Richmond, a bunch of them. Mike Cherry south of Richmond in the 66th, Mary Margaret Castleberg 73rd in Henrico County. Mark Early also Henrico County in the Richmond area. Tim Anderson and Glenn Davis, both out of Virginia Beach. And what am I forgetting right now? Oh, just did Otto Waxman, fantastic interview, south side of Virginia. Do you know him?
Oh, I know all those people. Yeah.
Oh man, what a sharp guy. And just conversational and just, common sense, steady Eddie kind of guy is what you're looking for. And that's a huge friggin' square mileage district down there.
Yeah.
They're not dealing with some of the things that you guys are that you're dealing with, which I said I'm going to flip this around. By the way, Spirit of VMI, we sort of stand watch the sentinels over VMI when it comes to legislation and legislators. That's how we have chartered ourselves, and so we're trying to keep politicians' hands out of the functioning of VMI and let VMI take care of itself. Pray that VMI does it the right way, but trying to reduce any undue external influences as much as we possibly can. So we'll talk a little bit about VMI at the end, but not very much. This is about you and you winning your district. We have already endorsed you. So
I know, and I'm very grateful for all your support. So thank you.
Well, sure thing. We did our due diligence. Our chairman of strategy, Tom Greenspan, is the one who found you and said, we have got to support this guy after doing research and talking with you and your team. So that's good stuff. And Tom's on the call here today as well. So I'm going to ask you all those things you cited as changes as far as your favorability. Would they be likely to vote for a first time guy, non-politician, 33-year-old dude who's worn his boots out and works hard and all that? What would you say the major issues are that are helping you pivot that vote away from the blue grip that has grabbed the Northern Virginia area?
There's a lot. One of the things that I think politicians generally do wrong is they run one type of messaging campaign for a wide electorate. In my districts, a lot of diversity, a lot of different religions, a lot of different backgrounds, education levels, everything. And so one of the things that I think has helped me is that when I go into a neighborhood, when you grow up with dyslexia and learning is hard, you become a people watcher and you pick up on signs, and nonverbals are the way you overcome. And so I've also, after I learned to read, I started reading all the time. And so Loudoun County in particular it's a melting pot of all different religions, backgrounds, countries. And so when I'm in a neighborhood, I identify certain symbols on so I know what to lead with. If I'm going to certain communities where the Asian American community, but I hate grouping a bunch of different nationalities into one category. My fiance is Korean, but we have data on people in our walk books, but the Asian, the Koreans, the Chinese, the Indians, education is very important to them. And what is ultimately most important about education is the opportunity for their children to take advanced placement classes. And so the State Board of Education has done a real disservice when the Secretary of Education compares Indian American children taking test prep classes to get into magnet schools as using steroids in sports. I find that highly offensive. And, for me, this whole campaign has been about working hard and persevering. And a lot of these kids, they work on my campaign and they're not cheating, that they are working hard and they're highly motivated. And I wish I would have known more kids like that when I was younger, because it would have made me more motivated. And so education and maintaining the opportunity to get ahead through education is a top issue in my district. Another thing that's very important is the business climate. There are a lot of people who have done really well over the last year and a half in the district, because we have this inflation driven real estate boom, inflation driven 401k and IRA boom. So we all feel like we're doing good, but it's all only on paper. However, one of the things that I am articulated is, yes, CNBC ranked us number one. We can debate the merits of how they did that poll and that ranking system, but the fact of the matter is, what has given Virginia a competitive advantage is our right to work laws. And there's a misconception on the other side of the aisle that right to work is anti-worker. It's not. It's actually pro-worker. It gives the worker the choice of whether or not to join a labor union. And so it has what made Virginia's economy great. And it's hard to make an argument about the need for right to work when in Northern Virginia, everybody feels like, they're really doing well. So the best way to do that is through conversations at the door. And so the economy and future economic growth opportunities and education have been the two things that me personally at the door I've focused on. Of course, we campaign on other things. My top personal issue, and this ties to veterans, is my fiance, her brother, he was a veteran, and he committed suicide, and nobody even knew. He was a happy-go-lucky guy, and nobody knew he was struggling. And so our top issue has been mental health, and it's number one on my palm card. It was for 9 months, and so in that poll, the one thing that we didn't talk about was we oversampled Democrats. And so the fact that we were polling that well with an oversample of Democrats shows how impressive what we have done. And by focusing on mental health, one, it's a passion project for my fiance. It's a passion project for me. I had two friends who are also veterans who committed suicide. And the number one thing about it, and the stories we've heard a lot at the door, I had my first set of palm cards. I didn't have mental health on it. And then I put mental health on it. Never heard about mental health. And then I put mental health at the top of the palm card, and the stories we would hear were heartbreaking. And stories of children who are happy and outgoing and now becoming depressed and putting on weight and not wanting to participate in the activities, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids. Suicide. And I met one guy whose daughter, and a diehard Democrat, never would have said this, but it was on the card, told me my daughter committed suicide 3 weeks ago. I mean, this is an issue. It has economic consequences because it affects productivity in the workplace. And most importantly, it's a people thing. And my party has not been great championing mental health, but the Democrats use it as a cheap talking point, and they're disingenuous about it, including my opponent. And we have to actually do stuff for mental health.
So what do you think? I'm sorry for interrupting you, but this probably gives me enough to ask a couple questions. What do you think that you as an elected delegate can do in order to address that mental health issue?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a basic understanding from school of economics, and it's all about supply and demand. and that even before COVID, the demand was far above the supply. And so for starters, one of the things that I think we need to do is, when I went to college, my school, a lot of people, we had a decent biology program. So a lot of my friends who I went to school with are now doctors. And I asked all of them, I said, why did none of you go into mental health? They said, we never pay off our loans. And so much like how in the military, when you go military, pay for your college, and then you have to give them X amount of service years. I think when people get into medical school, we should provide a grant program that allows them to go into the mental health field, and they have to work in mental health for X amount of years. And the thing about medicine is you get highly specialized. So if we're incentivizing people to go into mental health, that's a big step. And then, as we have more of a labor force, the supply or the demand supply axiom will, go in the favor and prices will lower. Another thing is, in this telehealth world, if I want to see a mental health provider, I have to see one in Virginia. But this opens up opportunities. So Ohio actually was kind of on the cutting edge of this during the pandemic. They passed a bill that allows mental health providers and healthcare providers to work over state lines. And so that also creates more competition to allow more opportunities and lowers the price. And we'll see how that plays out. But I in so many different areas of our economy, we have workforce shortages. But we need to fix mental health. It was a problem before, and it's a problem after. But the number one issue in mental health is the stigma that's attached to it. In construction industry, it's the number one cause of death. And a lot of people are, military people in particular, are strong people. In the construction industry, there's a lot of macho-ness. People don't want to admit that they need help. And so if, anything comes of this, it's mostly to just say it's okay to not be okay, ending the stigma. And I think that is just be my passion project. One of many.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we need to fix now, and we need to address by talking and make people realize that they can talk.
Okay, well, that's refreshing to hear that. It's the first time I've heard that from a candidate, and it's something that is probably near and dear to more people than people would realize. That most people know somebody who is suffering from some effects of impaired mental health, and it manifests its way all over the place. So that's a really good passion project, as you put it, and I appreciate your information on that. Education, this is a big thing. I mean, it's a national issue, and national issue really because of parents in Loudoun County who have said no mas on some of the stuff that's been happening with where, front stage is the critical race theory, I guess force feeding, and along with sort of mask mandating type of stuff, and just all kinds of issues. There are other issues too about the dumbing down of the curriculum, and you touched on it a little bit about people about the equity effort to get an equity approach to students being accepted into magnet schools, the really highly placed schools. I'm not sure I should say the actual names of the schools, but probably the best producing school,
as I like to call them.
Okay, yeah, in the nation. So, where does Wendy Goditis stand on all those? That whole mess.
She's voted for all the policies that required the localities to implement some of the equity initiatives, and that is, she's leading the charge. She's a reliable vote for not the Democratic Party, because there are some Democrats who are pro-business and are willing to work with Republicans. She's part of that wing that doesn't care who gets hurt as long as their side wins. And there's no give and take over on that wing. And so she's a reliable far left vote, and she's out of touch with the district and even the region. And so in terms of the first question, I'm a little bit different. My family adopted 4 kids from across the world. And so I have a sister who was adopted from Ethiopia. And, you know, one of the things I struggle with and is the fact that under this push, they say that my parents adopted a daughter from Ethiopia. It probably cost 6 figures to do it, to oppress her, not give her a chance at the American dream. And that really, really affects me and that type of mentality in our own household, because my parents are really good people who wanted to provide an opportunity and make sacrifices. My mom had to spend I think it was 4 weeks in Ethiopia to bring my sister home. And she was a part of our family. We love her. We don't see her any different. And we're all Clementes at the end of the day. And so for something, you know, to be so divisive in the school system, or for people to tell her that the only way she'll be successful is if, you know, other people are held down. I struggle with that. I also have a Korean sister. My fiance is Korean. And what I struggle with this is the ones who are really getting punished are the Asian Americans. And because they outperform, white Americans. I mean, they're amazing students because they work hard. And if we all, I said earlier, if I worked as hard as some of the Asian American kids who helped on my campaign and were as dedicated and committed and bright as, you know, those kids, you know, I'd probably already be a delegate, you know, but these kids who work hard, regardless of race, should be given an opportunity to achieve and get ahead. And dumbing down math and reading is it's absurd, because as a country, we don't even rank in math achievement in the top 20 anymore. And as a state, we're down at the bottom in the country. And if you took out Northern Virginia, I guarantee you, I mean, where would this state be on an international level? And so dumbing down our education system at our prestigious public schools, keep in mind, I didn't have that opportunity, is just, it's going to affect our economic engine in the state, which is Northern Virginia. Where I get really frustrated, I'm passionate about this, is they want to lower achievement. That doesn't do anything. I was fortunate because my dad was a risk taker and my mom was an advocate, my greatest advocate. And they got me into a school called the Lab School of Washington. It was a dyslexic-based school. When I went there, I didn't know how to read. And when I went there, people said I wasn't going to go to college. And that type of school, it just blows my mind in Loudoun County. The expensive part of building a school or opening up a school is, you know, Fairfax, it's hard because you have to shift kids around. But Loudoun, we're building new schools like every year. And so the capital costs are already accounted for. You know, as a delegate, I would fight to bring funding here to create a school for kids with learning disabilities like me with dyslexia. And that's how you close the equity gap. You don't close the equity gap by saying, oh, you're Asian and we have enough Asians in the school, so you can't come here. We close the equity gap by providing opportunities, because my dad had a little bit of money and my mom was willing to advocate for me. I mean, you can have money, come from money, or you can have a mom who advocates but not have the other, or you can have zero and neither one. And you never get that opportunity. So as a state, we need to invest in education that helps students who learn differently, because dyslexics are more likely to go to prison exponentially. They're more likely to have teenage children, or children as teenagers. They're more likely to be drug addicts or substance abusers. They're more likely to engage in all high-risk behavior, because when you think you're stupid, you're going to do stupid things. And so the best way to fix the equity equation, in my mind, is to create schools in the public school realm, because the average student has dyslexia. It's going to cost their parents $50,000 to send them to school. These schools shouldn't be based off of race or anything, but it provides opportunities for other kids who are falling behind. And I can speak, I know what it's like to fall behind and feel stupid. I get it, but the answer is not to dumb it down so the kids who have learn the way that we teach in our schools have to be punished. The way to fix it is to create new opportunities for the kids who just learn differently. They're no less smart, they just learn differently.
Yeah, I tell you, it's a molecular level issue that then cross-cuts across all the other issues. If you don't fix this, and if you don't fix it first, then really none of the other stuff matters in the long term.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
so I mean, mental health, the economy, the whole 9 yards.
Well, my whole thought on all of it actually is that mental health and education by both parties at the state level and the federal level are seen as a cost and not an investment, but they're all investments in the future, because if we don't provide opportunities for kids who learn differently. When I went to lab school, it was 90% funded by DC government and PG County. And the kids I went to school with, I was one of very few white kids. Now it's totally different, but it was a life-changing experience. And those kids were given an opportunity by DC and Maryland to have a fair shake at education. And it's always, ever since then, has always blown my mind that we can't have public schools. We build public schools for the gifted and intelligent. That's a great cause, and we should have those be based off of merit. But we should also build public schools for the kids who learn differently, like me.
That's a great message. That's a great message. So we've talked about a lot of stuff, three major topics, from the business climate, education, and veterans. We have not talked about, and mental health. We have not talked about public safety and your stance on really, to drive right to the matter, defunding of our law enforcement enterprise. So do you have any vignettes that you want to tell about what's happening up in Loudoun County or statewide? And I'll give you the floor.
Well, I think we need to fund our first responders, but keep coming back to mental health. My fiance, before she got into physician's assistant school, was a paramedic, and police, first paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, the trauma that they go through, putting their lives on the line to save us, it can be very detrimental to their mental well-being. I dealt with it daily with her, and she's very strong. And so I think, one, the short answer is no, I don't believe in defunding the police. To answer your follow-up question on my opponent, she is endorsed by the group that wants to have unarmed social workers policing the streets. So I no, absolutely not. But we have to make investments in the well-being of our first responders and our police officers, our paramedics, our EMTs, firefighters. And we also need to provide them an opportunity, and this is a big issue in Loudoun County, affordable housing. We need to allow them to live in the communities where they work. So this whole defund the police, want to know my personal feeling on it is, talk to a number of cops. I can't go talk to a cop in Leesburg. Loudoun County Sheriff's Office is a little bit different because they're constitutional office, so they can't be unionized, without a union rep showing up right away once I start talking to that Leesburg police officer. And in my conversations, what I have realized is that this whole anti-police narrative that they're pushing in Richmond, it has nothing to do with the people that they claim to be fighting for. It has everything to do with their union backers AFL-CIO, and all the other police unions that want to unionize Loudoun County's cops, then going to do it in Fairfax. And so they've created this environment of fear among police officers that they can't even do their job without being targeted. And from several cops' mouths, they don't want to join the union because they're going to have less money, but at least they don't have to worry about losing qualified immunity or being targeted or tried in court for just doing their jobs. And so they have vilified the cops to please some of their biggest donors in the unions. And so it's disingenuous. You look at what has happened across the country, the number one step in a lot of the police reform movements, Minnesota, prime example, is we want to take away the power of the union. And here they're saying, oh, we want to defund the police, but we also want to unionize them. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. And so we need to support our police officers. We need to give them adequate pay. We're living in a pandemic. They've been under a lot of stress every day they go to work. They've been responding to all sorts of issues, and the current General Assembly wouldn't give them a 5,000 pay bump, with a bunch of federal money. I mean, we can't vilify the people who protect us. And the funny story about all of it is, I've knocked doors all over the place. In Leesburg, we have some Section 8 housing, and the crime issue has come up a little bit here, a little bit there, but the number one place that says to me, like, where are the cops, is in the lower socioeconomic communities, because the people there, a lot of them don't feel safe. And so we're hurting the people who need help the most. But still, I cannot stress the need to provide adequate mental health funding for our first responders.
I'll tell you what, when you get elected, they're going to need your leadership to help protect the law enforcement community and to keep them off the radar, to help those Section 8 citizens that need it more than anybody else, and to represent that voice. It's weird. It's weird that you got, presumably you're a Republican, you got the Republican doing what the Democrat in the past would have done. Things have flipped and gotten crazy, haven't they?
Well, what's funny is that my opponent, she lives in Clark County, and she would never bother to walk into the places that I've gone into. And at the end of the day, those are the people who who need the help the most. And they want to work. They want good jobs. They want safe communities. They want good education. The people who are pushing me about critical race theory and where do I stand, or not where do I stand, but why am I not leading the charge to push that in the schools, are the ones who live in the $1 million houses. The people who all of their narrative is supposed to help, that they want food on their table, they want a roof over their head, they want a safe neighborhood, and they want a good paying job. And nothing that the other side is creating is providing those opportunities. And that'll be, we don't want to leave. I don't want to leave people behind. And even if I don't get one vote in that neighborhood, I'm still going to be that community's biggest champion, because they need a voice. I'd be honored to be their voice.
Yeah, good. And it's clear that comes out loud and clear. I'm going to try to keep this in under an hour, and we're coming up on 45 minutes right now. So I'm going to ask you a couple more things, and then close it out. Today the country's ripping each other's throats out. From left to right, conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. The chasm is is wide, and it's getting deeper as well. Can you help with that? Can you help do what you need to do, stand for what you need to stand, and then also try to help put some salve on this wound?
Well, the short answer is yes. It goes back to what I've touched on already, perseverance. Most people go down after they get elected to Richmond or their state capital or Washington, D.C. with that in mind, and then they get beat down and they give up and they just become a reliable Republican vote, a reliable Democratic vote, and it's warfare. I'm a big sports guy, so I make a lot of sports analogies. So last night, my favorite football team played. Now they are called the football team, and they played the Giants, one of our biggest rivals. And after the game, the players hugged each other. They said good game, and they were no longer at war because they were going off the football field. It's become 24/7 that both parties are constantly at war, and it's my intention to bring people together. And a lot of people give up, but if I could have given up a long time ago. And I'm principled, and I know what I want to accomplish, and I will not give up down there, regardless of how hard it is. I always stand for what I believe in.
That's encouraging. It's encouraging to hear. When's the wedding, by the way?
Well, COVID kind of threw us a wrinkle last year, and then now she's in school. I got this, and so we're waiting to find, when I win, whether or not I have to run next year. Then we'll figure it out. She literally studies. I've never seen anyone study so hard. But she's, the thought of her having to plan a wedding on top of school is like, it's going to fall on me, which is probably be a disaster in itself. But I'm just trying to let her get through her first semester and get her sea legs under her with this new journey she's on.
That's funny. So I know normally at this point I go through a song and dance about the VMI, the mission statement, and all that stuff. But I think just in all the stuff we've been talking about, you clearly what we want to happen is people we endorse, we want them to win.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose of these interviews is to get their stance on the issues that would help them look different than their opponent, and stand for the things that people who may vote for you, who may be VMI supporters, could get behind and support, either at the ballot box themselves or also, on the phone or online, while they try to do Dan Bongino's 10-10-10, try to get 10 people and 10 phone calls and 10 voters and those things out to the polls. So I won't burden you with a whole bunch of reading about VMI, but just can you tell me? Go ahead.
I read it. Some of the facts are interesting. Of course, I've had my own experience with VMI, and so for starters, I knew it was a great value. I didn't realize what a good value it was. It is a tremendous value. The one thing from a policy standpoint is, I cannot speak to the experience at VMI because I did not go there, but I can speak to the men and women who I've known who went in there as children and came out as people I admired, even though they were my peers. And so it's worked. But from a political standpoint, I think VMI is being vilified by the governor. That type of behavior, the people I know who've gone to VMI in your generation, the generation before, my generation, are upstanding citizens. They love their country, they love their state, and they love their fellow men and women. And the governor was a racist, and that doesn't mean that VMI is bad. And so he is vilifying VMI as an excuse for his poor behavior and to save his own political skin. And I think that is apparent. And anyone who tries to latch on and attack VMI while forgetting the facts of the matter, that our governor was either in blackface or in a Klan mask, that had nothing to do with VMI. That had to do with Ralph Northam. And that's not a VMI thing. My personal experience with VMI is my best friend and he'd kill me if I say his name, so I'll tell you offline. But he went there, and when we were little boys, I've known him since I was 8. He said, "I'm going to be a Navy SEAL." Everybody laughed at him. What are you talking about? At 8, who wants to be a SEAL? And so he got into VMI. He was an athlete there, and when we went in, I mean, this was the friend. When I was growing up, I was the oldest, so parents were very restrictive. There were like 8 or 9 times he was like banned from the house because he was such a goofball and just a joker. Not a bad kid, but just not necessarily someone you would think who would go to VMI. And so then he goes to VMI because that's his path to being what he wants to be, a SEAL. And he goes there, and he goes dark, can't talk for 3 months. And I would see him at breaks, and I was fascinated. How many people have left? How many people have left? And he would say, "Oh yeah, more. They're just drumming out left and right." And I just hate him. Sorry. Okay, forget I said it. Because he was dedicated, and it really made him into an amazing man. And when he went to came out of school, he had a bad accident. It took him like 4 years to get into the service, but he never gave up. And then he goes to bullets. He's like 26. Everybody else is 18, 19. And the first time, he got done the first time. And it was, to me, that perseverance, and seeing someone who I've cared about my whole life, and since we were little boys said he was going to do this. If he'd gone to even the Naval Academy or any other school, I can say, in my own personal opinion, he wouldn't have achieved his dream. And that perseverance, and that the man he came out to be was, and I can tell story after story about people I've known who've gone to VMI, and they wouldn't be where they are without VMI. And they're white, they're black, they're Asian, they're men, they're women. They come from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, but the institution is what made them who they are. And my story of perseverance is the story of perseverance. Everyone who makes it through VMI has a story of perseverance, because it is not easy to get through, but the people who do will always be able to overcome adversity because of what is a rigorous program, and a lot more, from my stories I've heard, harder than the academies. And they make people understand that if they believe in themselves, they can achieve. And so this whole thing, regardless of the push and the pull, the governor is using you guys as an attempt to clean his own slate. And judging on that character assessment of him, my personal opinion is he doesn't act or carry himself like someone who went to BMI.
Yeah, they're always the ones who fall through the cracks. So hey, I appreciate all that. That's well said, and we've got to bottle that a non-VMI person has that point of view, and someone who's not already dipped in the place has come out with that opinion, and I think a well-founded opinion too. So. I think it's probably time for us to let you go and knock on some more doors. Today is September 17th. Early voting does start today, which means the more that people get out. I got a phone call about 2-3 weeks ago from Glenn Youngkin thanking me for doing these interviews, one, to expose the people who should be sitting in Richmond, taking care of business for the state and for Logic, and asked me to promote the idea of early voting and to get it out as much as we possibly can. It's strange to all of us. We've never done it before. But it's the rule, it's the way it's going. So we might as well take advantage of it. And it helps you guys understand what doors you don't have to knock on anymore because they've already gone, right?
Well, I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm still compassionate. But from my campaign, I've been running it like a business because I have businessmen investing in me and investing in my campaign to win. And so one of the things that I really like about it, and I'm promoting it, is every mailer we send out, I mean, it costs money, like 2 mailers, 2 households is $1, and to break it down easily. And so every family and individual who goes and votes early, whether they're a supporter or a non-supporter, but they're, a softie, it saves us, $1. And so that is huge. And that's just on the mail. It doesn't count on the amount of people that I pay to go door knocking or my time going door knocking. And so it is a wonderful thing for democracy, for people to be able to vote early and vote early in person. I encourage voting early in person. Not that I have an issue with absentee ballots, but the only story I can tell is that my grandfather sent me a Christmas card in November, and I got it right before my birthday in February. And if it wasn't for the Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays little stamp that USPS puts on, I would have thought it was my birthday card. And 3 months to get that, I mean, give me a break. And so I am going to vote early in person today, and I encourage people to go vote early. For people who live in my district, particularly in the Leesburg part or the Loudoun County part, the early voting location is in the district. And so there's no excuse not to vote early because things can happen on election day.
Yeah. Yep.
You can
it
have
just makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we got to do it. And, I'm happy to promote it. And if anyone is voting early, hopefully I'll see you there at the polls because, I'll be hanging out there and talking to voters over the next several weeks.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Tom, you're on here. Do you want to say anything real quick before we close up?
I'm going to vote tomorrow, I believe. So.
Oh, very good. And you're in my district, right, Tom?
I am. Yeah. I live in Aldi. So.
Very good.
That's great. Great interview, Nick. Good job. And we're excited about your campaign and your message.
Well, thank you so much. And we're going to bring it home. And we appreciate all your support. And any word you can spread among the very successful VMI network that you guys are connected with, of course, would be greatly appreciated. I'd love to meet as many of the fine women and men of VMI as possible.
Well, you got it, and you'll get that from us. We appreciate it. Hey, I always close these by asking if you can say it's kind of funky, it's kind of clunky. The slogan we have, our first year, we had to first impress on everybody who listens or connects with us to get over the hump that people like Ralph Northam and others say VMI is bad. So a very simple retort to that is VMI is good. We'll go on with a different marketing campaign later. So you just said it, VMI is good. Is that right?
Absolutely. I'd say, great is, how I would refer to it, but I can work with VMI is good also.
Okay. Well, we'll give you an opportunity to upgrade that as we go on, past this election cycle and stay in touch with you. Hey, it's really an honor to talk with you today.
It's an honor to talk to you guys.
This thing will be out in probably later this afternoon, chopped up and sent. I don't think we have to do really any edits. We're just going to send it to them, probably chop off the very beginning where, before we actually started, and you'll have it probably today. So do what you want to do with it. If you have a campaign staff that can cut it up and use sound bites, whatever. Okay.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Tom, thanks for joining.
You bet. Great job, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.